Well, welcome everybody. I've got a privileged guest today, and the theme of today is the woman who spiced up the 90s. Should I say the roaring 90s, because it was a very exciting time. For my special guest, Dee Izmail, who fundamentally was the engine designer, or one of the engine designers behind the Spice Girls clothing. But we're going to go into that in a lot more detail in the next sort of few minutes. We're also going to talk about the woman on a mission. So I'm proud to basically today to be interviewing Dee Izmail, who fundamentally has got one fantastic story to tell us about the roaring 90s, the Spice Girls and other celebrities. But there's also a more serious side to this. She's also the founder of a foundation called the Kawasaki Disease, which is basically a brand that she's on a mission with right now to make us all aware of a disease that's not getting enough publicity right now to fix. So with that in mind, Dee, it's an honor to talk to you and it's a privilege to interview you. And how did it all begin?
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me. Hello, Paul. Hello, everybody. My mother was a designer, and I was always fascinated by the way she would just clear the kitchen table and start cutting cloth that would then turn into an outfit for us girls. And I was just always fascinated by that, and I was inspired, and I felt like that was something that I could do as well. And I had all these ideas of something that I wanted to wear, and I wanted to find a way to create them.
Yeah. Interesting, because I'm right to say that you came from Turkish roots, is that right?
Yes, I'm a Turkish Cypriot.
All right,
Yes.
excellent. So there's, I think there's the degree of mystery that runs through your brands, and particularly obviously the time you spent in the roaring 90s with obviously a very world famous brand, girl band, the Spice Girls. I'm fascinated to find out a little bit about how that all came about as a designer.
Well, when I was quite young, I used to dance around the house and just imagine myself as a performer. Couldn't sing to save my life, I still can't, but I always wanted to act, and I absolutely loved dancing, and I often dreamt that I wanted to be a dancer.
Yeah.
I just love the stage, I love the limelight. But it was all a bit taboo because my father was quite a strict Turkish
Right.
father, and it was very difficult to express myself in the way that I really wanted to. And as I grew up, I felt really ashamed of a lot of things that I wanted to do in terms of expressing my sexuality, and it was seen by the Turkish community to be um, taboo and not the right things to do. But I just wanted to wear exciting clothing that made me feel fantastic, bringing my energy levels up and actually showing off on stage. And that's how I started going to clubs when I was quite young. In those days, you could actually get in by just saying you were 18.
Right, okay, no checks.
And I was maybe 15 and a half. But yeah, I kind of grew up in the clubs, and I started going to modelling and dancing school on a Sunday, and I met some wonderful people who were very, very talented, who've done amazing things, and I was inspired by them.
Yes.
Actors, actresses, dancers, singers, all sorts. And I really wanted to be in performance, but that wasn't going to happen because I also loved creating clothing, and I wanted to learn about the technical aspects of cutting patterns and fitting garments well, the use of textiles and fabrics, how textiles and fabrics behave with certain fits and cuts. Very important for me. And I think I've always had a technical mind. My mother was a pattern cutter as well, so she was also technical. My brothers are quite technical, so we come from that background.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the way I sort of perceive that, Dee, is obviously the roots came from the family and the kitchen table, and I call it kitchen talk. In entrepreneur land, a lot of inspired ideas come from the kitchen, and I know there's in Cypriot land, the food's great.
Yeah.
I can speak volumes for the food. I've got to understand. So there's, just going back to the roots, there's a lot of passion. And it's clear that you embodied yourself at a very early age to do two things, as I perceive it. Is one, express who you were under sort of maybe a sort of slightly frustrating, environment, a little bit taboo, but equally you were expressing your emotions in life through the imagery and the design and the identity you were creating, not necessarily for yourself, but for others, would obviously just lead you into some real significant work, iconic work, because, spinning forward, a lot of the outcome of your work is iconic. You're part of that timeline where, clearly the Spice Girls were moving in a fantastic direction, and you were sort of, in amongst that. But just coming back, I think that what makes you very special, I think at the very early stage, is you weren't just in it for the glamour. You were more interested in the science behind the fabrics. You immersed yourself into this and you embodied it. And I think that's indicative of what you've, latterly done with, the great work for the children's charity around Heart and Kawasaki, etc., which we're going to come on to. So is it fair to say that you come from a world of, where people are passionate, dedicated, and hands-on?
And hands-on. I think from a young age, coming into this country as refugees, as a family from Cyprus, being placed in North London with very little to start with. My mother already had 4 children by the time we were placed here. I always had a way of imagining beautiful things, and part of that was glamorous clothing, and I wanted to wear those things, so I could find the smallest pieces of offcuts of my mother's fabrics where she might have been making us a jacket or something, and I'd take those little offcuts and create something, for my Cindy doll. And I just wanted to see the glamour because it made me feel good, and my imagination was just so prolific that it led to me wanting to look like that. I wanted to look beautiful and athletic, and I wanted to work on myself, and I started looking at how I can change myself. And I never forget the time when my cowslick on my hair, because I had quite frizzy sort of hair, we've got a little bit of African in our roots. So by the time I was 16, I decided that I would have dreadlocks. So there's some photos of me with dreadlocks here and here, and that was the solution. And I could make then my own clothing, and I could look really trendy and unique, actually, because I was probably one of the first light-skinned girls that had dreadlocks back in the 80s.
Right, 80s.
Yes,
wow.
in the 80s.
You were part of the pioneering of girl power, which is, we spin up a few years, and where we are today with the emanation of love and beauty and the holistic world we're all moving towards, and how we are becoming more precious about ourselves and more conscious about, the clothes that we're wearing and things. But, going back, that it's fair to say that you were a groundbreaking rebel in your day.
I definitely do have a rebel in me, and I don't think it's always served me well, I have to say, because I've gone against the grain of a lot of things growing up, and found myself in difficulties quite a lot in my life because of that rebel element. And I think it just stems way back to a time where I wasn't allowed to do the things that I wanted to do freely growing up. And there were a lot of limitations, a lot of restrictions on me as a Turkish young lady growing up, and wanting to present myself in a certain way, and it just was taboo. It wasn't allowed, and there was shame placed on that if you tried to do it. So I actually left home at 18 with not a lot, and had to find my own way because I wasn't going to get the support. And in fact, I remember around that time of my life, my father disowned me because I was Yes, I was deemed to
What,
be.
literally disowned you?
Well, by the time I'd married my husband, who was a Catholic and we're Muslim,
Wow.
and had children with him,
Goodness
he
gracious.
had completely disowned me and
Good
didn't
grief.
want to know me at all.
Very difficult.
Um, um, so these were really difficult times for me because I didn't have the support, and I just felt like I was pretty much isolated in a family unit. Although my siblings understood me better, but in terms of a Turkish community, I always shied away from that community because I felt I was going to be judged. And so I just wanted to do what I felt was right for me, but in a really constructive way. So I'm the sort of person who likes to be completely involved in what I envisage creating as a result. Um, and that's why I think I wanted to be trained in certain areas of technical aspects, pattern cutting, grading, understanding fabrics better, deep dives into fitting clothing to the body, men, women, children. It didn't matter for me. I just wanted to learn as much as I could. I wanted to grow. I wanted to evolve. And I couldn't evolve with those limitations and restrictions and being judged, because often I felt I was misunderstood. I'm trying to do one thing, and then I've got a distraction here breaking me down.
Yeah, I get it. So I think that obviously there's a lot of energy in what you're saying, and in the adversity of what you actually ended up punching through as a rebel. So just thinking about our audiences that are listening to this, and there's probably some young up and coming people that are maybe considering entrepreneurship in design. Have you got any quick, could you capture in a couple quick takeaways on what advice you'd give them? Because obviously, you know, this is common, isn't it? A lot of people are repressed in the family environment. They can't get
Yes.
forward in life. So,
Yes.
what advice would you give?
Yes. Right. Well, I think it is different for each person
Mm-hmm.
because everybody is experiencing something different,
Mm-hmm.
and people have different abilities, people have different visions. I don't know whether somebody is seeing themselves as the one who would be maybe a CEO and create structure and delegate that to hands-on people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're hands-on and
Mm-hmm.
technical like me, then I would say that you have to focus and be diligent in the work that you believe in terms of creativity.
Right.
So I know I can go in my workshop today, and if I have a vision, I can scout about for the right things in there. If I haven't got it, I can go on the internet and order it, and I can piece my things together, and I can see the creation at the end of my project. And so I would say, if you feel that in your gut that you can create with your hands and your mind, then you have to work hard at doing that and cut everything else out.
So the way I'm picking up on this, Dee, it's very, very clear that you're passionate about the subject that you've represented, which has been design from the very, very get-go, and defining that design in some respects personally to actually become remarkable and stand out is an inner thing, isn't it? I mean, you use the word gut, and I think a lot of us today don't use our gut intelligence enough. But what I'm picking up from yourself as an entrepreneur myself, and clearly you are an entrepreneur, there has to be soul in what you're doing. Don't you agree? I think that
Yes.
you have to have that level of energy and determination. And I think you're obviously very ethereally clever, meaning good ideas, and then bringing them to life materially, literally, through a full body experience, if you don't mind me saying. So the feel of it, and it's very relevant for today, which hopefully we'll come on to a little bit today, about what I call sensational living. A lot of it's all sensing, isn't it? And
Yes.
feel. And I know that you showed me some fabric last night, actually, and it was absolutely amazing. But the way you explained it, the technical detail you went into it was fascinating. So, it's all got a great story. But I think the point I'm trying to make for anybody listening to this that's looking to endeavor and go on a journey of design or fashion is learn as much as you possibly can, not just at the sort of, pardon the language, the front end, but the back end, which is understanding the technical detail. But I think where I'm going with that, the primary driver, it was very clear, and it comes across that you're highly inspired through what you do. So you're always in spirit. You've got a soul about what you're doing, which helps, doesn't it? Don't you find when you're creating something, you're giving, pardon the language, but you're giving birth to soul.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes, it is a kind of feeling like that. It's a sort of hunger actually
Right.
for doing it again in different versions. I find that a lot of things around me can be inspirational. You don't have to go to great lengths to pick up inspiration. You just need to start with the thought,
Mm-hmm.
and that will then manifest itself
Mm-hmm.
into the elements of how it starts to form,
Mm.
the color, the shape, the
Mm.
detail. And that's then
Mm.
creating the project that you have a vision of seeing the end
Mm.
result.
Mm.
So yeah, it is a kind of inner feeling that I use from my gut, really. Sometimes I can let things pass, but sometimes there'll be something that really resonates itself with me and has a meaning, and that then helps me to take it to the next level. So it's very much an inner thing.
It
Yes.
is. I think it's a vibe, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of holistic talk in the world at the minute about frequency and evolution of life and all the rest of it. So we're all naturally creators, yet you've mastered it. There's something that I've picked up that I've got to mention. I think that in the world of entrepreneurship, and particularly for young ladies that are moving into sort of fashion and maybe coming from difficult circumstances, grit and determination, clearly that comes across. But don't you sometimes find managing being lonely on that journey? Not
Yes.
necessarily physically, because you've always got people around you, I dare say, but in your heart, it's sometimes a lonely path, because it's personal to you, isn't it? And
Yes.
and I think to just add to that, Dee, that it's very clear from the work that I've seen over the last few days that you've done is amazing, and is sort of it's stood the test of time. It's iconic, and it's highly expressive. And I think that is the message, isn't it? Express yourself.
Yes, and that all starts from a thought. So I think being mindful about the end result is what will help you to initiate your creativity. So the mind is very important, and I know that you have
Mm-hmm.
in your business you promote health and mindfulness and mental health
Mm-hmm.
quite a lot. And
Oh
that's a
yes,
really interesting
yeah,
aspect for me because I have suffered depression since a child,
right.
and there has been depression in our family
Mm.
history. And it's something that I found creativity has helped me work
Yes.
my way through. It's easy to be distracted, and things will happen in life. Negative things can happen, but you've always got to bring yourself back to center. So I think having a little area where you have your workspace with your creative
Mm.
tools or materials, it's really quite important. And that's why I think my workshops have been very important to me.
Mm.
So if you are hands on, if you feel you can create with your hands and your mind, I think it's really important to have. You don't have to have anything major. You don't need to have a great budget either. Just having some color and some texture,
Mm.
detail, shapes that you love, that
Mm.
inspire you.
Mm.
These things are important,
Mm.
and looking for new things to
Mm.
refresh the old. That was also very important for me.
Mm.
And that's why fashion,
Mm.
with its moving trends all the time,
Mm.
its emerging trends all the
Mm.
time, keeps me engaged.
I think your points are very, very well made, and I mean, there's so much detail we can go into cover here. But for those of you that are listening, I think clearly how I interpret this is I think that your journey was giving you an identity. It was clear that as you were marching through in the early years, you were creating a brand within the brand, which was you. And obviously, before we dive into the sort of roaring 90s in more detail, particularly around the Spice Girls, because you had a major impact on their brand identity uh, from a clothing perspective, obviously, but equally, you were supporting that big sense of expression. And at the time, we were using the term girl power. We might as well bring it up because it was a time of girl power in that sense,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yes.
So, you know, you are working, you know, from that ethereal, it wasn't happening, and then all of a sudden it did. But it's great. But the point, you know, you touched on, and, you know, there's a lot here, but mental health is a really deep subject, and it's something I'd like to discuss a bit further down the track. But it really can, you know, you can lose your identity very, very quickly.
Yes.
And I think that, you know, if you're a creative, then, you know, to overcome that, sometimes being creative, and sort of mastering that destiny of creativity through, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's painting, whether it's fashion design, you know, it's the mastery of the mind, isn't it? And
Yes.
it's tuning into the gifts of what you can offer. And obviously, clearly, you demonstrated that very well. But did have its setbacks. It's clear,
It has done.
you know, and you know, it's like all things, isn't it? Without being melodramatic about things, I feel that business, life, entrepreneurship, whatever we do, it is a romance. It's got its ups and it's got its downs, and it's not a straight line journey for anybody. But with all of that in mind, I mean, we can, you know, revisit a couple of these themes as we march through our time together today. Um, let's go into the 90s, you know, because you know, you super landed in there, didn't you? Must have been on one adrenaline shift. So let's just flip into that for
Okay.
how did it all happen there? You know?
I will start right from the beginning, and I
Yeah.
will say I'm an 80s girl,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And, you know, for me, the 80s was really an exciting time, but I didn't know that the 90s would overpower that,
Right.
because then the club scene and, you know, that whole culture of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the sort of nightlife,
Mm-hmm.
it was so exhilarating for
Mm-hmm.
me. It did keep me, it did make me feel alive, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that was huge inspiration for me in my creativity. I could see how others were expressing themselves, and that, you know, that I felt good about expressing myself. So there was that kind of exchange going on all the time with the trends of everything, really, the nightlife trends and the, you know, the places to go and the places to be seen. We didn't have the too much on internet, and I didn't even know how to switch on a computer at the time, but it was all about interacting, and I still miss that, to be
Right.
honest with you. Even though we've got the 90s trends that have done full circle and come back again, we're missing the culture of the 90s.
Yes.
And, you know, I love the stage in that time, you know, the nightlife, the stage, the limelight, who you are, being able to express yourself physically, you know, the way you dress, the way you come across, the way you behave, just everything, you know, your hair, your makeup. You actually felt seen out there, physically seen out there. It was, for me, it was a really exhilarating time. And anyone I talk to that has experienced the 90s say the same thing. There has, of course, been some downsides of that, because of course, the 90s are known for its sort of drug scene as well, and its drug culture as well. That's a very negative aspect. But in terms of enhancing our euphoria and our mental health, we were on top of the world. You know,
Yeah.
we were able to feel.
So was it quite hedonistic?
Yes, yes, it was. It was. But you know, if you kept on the right road, you were okay. But of course, I'm only speaking for myself, because I didn't drink very much, and I never did drugs, so you know, I don't have that experience to talk about. But the 90s was a really, it was quite varied, and there was a lot of different scenes going on.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if I think about it, you know, in an order, we had a very exciting time in the 70s. We had New York disco, we had Philly, you know, the 101 Club in, you know, and then you had the rise of people like Peter Stringfellow, who I
Yes.
believe that you knew and worked with from time to time.
Yes, I dressed his girlfriend Helen Benoist. I've actually made some suits for Peter Stringfellow as well. Silk linen suit that I made for him. So yeah, I actually had a lifetime membership at Stringfellows, and I
Right.
was there regularly,
Yeah.
twice a week, a Monday and I think, yeah, Monday nights there was a very good DJ there, I remember, and it was the place to be, really.
So there was a direct link between fashion, expressing. You found your way into the music industry in effect, because obviously the club scene,
Yeah.
and then moving towards dressing some celebrities to the Spice Girls, to name a few, and so this was your way of expressing your identity, and by immersing yourself in your profession and becoming the master of that destiny in those times, those iconic times, it must have been euphoric. It must have
It really
been
was. It
must have been
was.
just high for like a decade. Not
The,
on life I'm talking about.
yeah. Well, it was exciting times, but like we said earlier, there's always other things to deal with in life as well. So I was in business and I was trying to grow my business. So
Right.
there were always the challenges that came with it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't always flying high. So it's
Yeah.
I would say that you do have to be quite focused when you enter into the fashion industry, because it's not an easy industry, that's for sure. And if you are not serious about it, you will not succeed.
So working with the Spice Girls, how did you feel when you first started to engage with them in regards to clothing them for their gigs? And obviously they were in the public eye almost like on an hourly basis.
Well, I'll go back to how I actually got to that place. In the late 80s, I took on a boutique in the Roman Road,
Right.
and my daughter became unwell with Kawasaki disease.
Right.
And after some years, when she started recovering,
Mm-hmm.
I then felt that it was time for me to take the next step in my career and take on something that was more based central London. So I took on a flagship store in Covent Garden, and that is what really started attracting stylists and the clientele
Yes.
in the music and film industry.
Yes.
So I started working with commissions, but I also had the retail aspect of it. So stylists can come in and buy or hire pieces that were used for, maybe like Destiny's Child was a client of mine at the time. As you can see here,
Yes.
I've made up some latex and footwear and crochet, some fringed bikini pieces that I had been commissioned to make at the time.
Very impressive.
And similarly for other clients as well, that you'll see again in some of the photos behind me.
Yes.
And they were really commissions coming through my store, because what was presented in my showcase was a lot of clubwear. And that really stemmed from me loving to wear all of those pieces. And,
so you tested them out.
Yeah, yes.
Am I right to say that you ended up in a position, a circumstantial position, where your daughter was suffering a disease?
Yes.
You were working, running your business in
Yes.
London.
Yes, I had my first boutique in Roman Road, and
Right.
It was during that phase where I just recently got married. I had a son, and then the year later I had my daughter. And when she was 7 months old, she became really unwell, and GPs were unable to diagnose her. When they initially diagnosed her, they said she had an infection. I think he said an ear infection. Gave her some antibiotics.
Did you say ear?
I think they said she had an ear infection, some sort of infection, like a cold or flu virus. I couldn't understand what it is they were diagnosing her with, to be honest, but they gave us antibiotics, penicillin, and then after a few days, actually, she was not getting better. She was, in fact, getting worse. And so we went back, saw another doctor, and after 3 times of seeing a GP, we ended up in an A&E, a hospital that basically saved Nadia's life. Queen Elizabeth Hospital in East London, where my husband and I both had our businesses at that time. And there was a South African nurse there, a male nurse, who had seen us in the waiting area, and he picked up on Nadia's symptoms, and she had all 6 classic symptoms of Kawasaki disease. which are a rash around the body, a fever, loss of appetite, an infected eye, ulcerated mouth,
Mm-hmm.
two key symptoms of Kawasaki disease. And then she, as a sixth and final classic symptom, did have the peeling of the extremities, so fingers, bottom, feet.
Right.
And that then told the nurse that she had mucocutaneous lymph node syndrome. So while we were waiting to see a doctor, he had called me, and then he had this encyclopedia, and he showed me Kawasaki disease,
Mm-hmm.
named after Dr. Kawasaki, that discovered this illness after Hiroshima
Mm-hmm.
in Japan,
right,
back in the 60s.
right.
And it was called a rare disease.
Is it man-made? Is it a man-made disease? Is it something that came out of an incident or something? Because you
Well,
mentioned
Hiroshima,
Hiroshima.
yeah.
Yeah.
So after Hiroshima and Takashima, there was a lot of chemicals in the environment that when a child with a
Right.
predisposition of a gene
Mm-hmm.
breathes that in, triggers inflammation that builds up around the coronary arteries of the
Good
heart.
grief.
And
Wow.
this is called Kawasaki disease, mucocutaneous lymph node syndrome. And so therefore this has been more and more seen over the years, but still not diagnosed promptly within 5 to 6 days.
Yeah.
And GPs are still not picking up on the classic symptoms of KD. It's being mistaken for red fever or just an infection of some kind, being given antibiotics, wasting more time. What we try to promote is to prevent what happened to us with our daughter.
Yeah. And I think it's, this comes on to your mission, which I know we're going to go into a little bit more detail. But if you look at, your lifestyle at that time must have just come to earth.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're flying at 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And then this
came to a grinding halt.
And not knowing as well what it was is a form of torture for parents,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Absolutely.
Puts a lot of pressure on life. And, your daughter's obviously there, but, the emotional sort of like upheaval that creates for people. And it's interesting.
It was a very difficult time.
Yes, I can imagine. And I think, in today's times where we are jumping about here, but, I think it's fair to say that a lot of things are getting pacified, and pushed to one side. And I think that this comes back to, you and your mission. And I know that, you are passionate about this, that creating awareness, raising capital funds to, solve the problem. I think if it can be solved, we've got to solve it. And how do we do it? And I know that you've connected with people on an international scale on this subject. But there's a more, so I'm going to join a couple of like pieces of the jigsaw of your life. The kitchen table in your roots, and then finding that light from the dark with your circumstances as a child, with the repressive environment, and escaping and moving on, and then creating an identity, and then becoming unstoppable in the 80s and the 90s with that identity, but then sharing that identity through your great work, which was fashion design and the technical aspects of clothing and cloth, and and then basically using world famous models to put it on, which was fantastic. But underneath all of that, there's that extra sort of, there's that the same sort of embodiment and passion and commitment that you've reached to with the Kawasaki disease, because you are on a mission with this, aren't you?
Yes.
On an international, I know it's UK represented.
Yes, it is.
But equally, you have touched out in America with people.
That's the research panel in San Diego, the Ruddy Center.
Yeah.
Basically, I was turning every stone when I set up the charity to find answers for my own daughter. Why did this happen to her? What would be the long-term prognosis? We didn't have any guidance on this. There was nobody we could really talk to about it. And she suffered the inflammation for about 4 years. And I set about trying to find out those answers for myself. So on my journey, well, I actually started with the Japan thing, but then Dr. Kawasaki was getting very old around that time, and I couldn't make direct contact. But then after some years, I found that the research panel shifted to the US. I think it's been about 15 or so years now that the global scientists of the research panel is all happening in the Radi Center, led by Dr. Burns. And this for me was really, really very interesting. There's been a lot of new information that I was really excited about learning, because it meant that I could share this data with other families, with other parents, and help save children's lives. We've come to a point where our punchline now is, what do we do? What do I do if I think my child has got Kawasaki disease? Is the child needs an ultrasound. So it's a very straightforward direction to helping to save a child's life. So rather than waiting through seeing a GP, and I'm not trying to undermine GPs, what I am saying is that because Kawasaki disease is a very alarming condition and ruins lives and can kill children, even in young adult life, even if they get through it as a child, it's very, very important to know the symptoms and not waste time. So prompt diagnosis is imperative. And how will that happen is to ask for an ultrasound. So you cut out all the waiting and wasting time. All the information is also on our website. There's a parent hand guide. If you're still confused, you basically look at all the symptoms. If your child has got 3 to 4 symptoms of the 6 classic symptoms, ask for an ultrasound. That will help you get the clarity you need. If there's any swelling around the arteries, you know that Kawasaki has struck.
It's obviously a complex scenario where you've got a very interesting but highly complex disease that hits children. And if you hit it, general practitioners today, unfortunately, having to pacify so much through, unfortunately, they end up misdiagnosing certain things, because obviously rare diseases as well sometimes can mimic common diseases, because we pattern ourselves.
Kawasaki disease is a complex disease, and it does mimic other illnesses.
Yes. And I think that's mystery, isn't it, for a lot of doctors?
Yes. It does strike children mainly under 5, but I think the parent hand guide is there for parents to educate themselves. And the research data that we extrapolate, we put it into a medical report that is more concise. It's all there even for GPs to look up, and often I've had GPs calling in to sort of see if they can get more information. And
so you're creating it's really good what you're doing, Dee. I think it's life-changing, life-saving. One, making it aware. I know it's like all things that are medical these days that are on that path of identity. Let's go back to that. In some respects, you're giving it an identity for people to sort of hinge off, which is fantastic work. Again, your ethereal to material mind, where you produce something. And I think it's fair to say for the audience, if they're looking for more information, that we'll have this on a drop down. That if anybody is, wanting to take this to another step, that would be great. I also think that, like all things, funding is critical, and I know you're spearheading a number of funding initiatives right now to support this, traumatic disease. You can expand on that a little bit for us.
Yes. So what I would like to do for Kawasaki disease is to have more events through the artistic work that I do at Ease, and to be able to raise awareness through, maybe a creation of something artistic or a piece of fashion that would then be put on display, using some of my knowledge and creativity to raise awareness for Kawasaki disease and get other parents and children involved as well, where maybe children can paint a heart, create a heart in some form that would be on display at an exhibition or an event where others can come in. And it's all a form of educating people in the community about what Kawasaki disease really is and how it impacts lives.
It's interesting, you know, Dee, because from personal experience, I was very unlucky to lose my sister at a very early age.
Yes.
So I can empathise wholeheartedly how you must have felt when your daughter obviously was struck with this and how it impacts his family life. You know, it just brings everything to a grinding halt. Unfortunately, my sister passed away at 4, and it's interesting us talking over recent times about this disease.
Yes.
The cause of death is still relatively really unknown about my sister, but she had an ear infection. She ended up in hospital on antibiotics that she took an allergic reaction to, which then took her on a journey of 6 weeks and then death. So,
Oh my goodness.
and it was interesting because, you know, it just comes back to time, diligence, and really putting some effort behind the awareness of some of these things. So in our case as a family, it was very stressful, particularly for my parents, because they were trying to really uncover what happened from a fit little girl to death in 6 weeks through what was perceived as an ear infection. And then there was a whole raft of complications.
And she had all the symptoms.
She had all the symptoms, yeah. And
wow.
And that's you know, we've only recently met in the sense of the last number of months in our work. It's interesting because this is bringing some stuff home for me. And I always recall my father challenging the system, but he wasn't getting the answers.
Yes.
And I think it comes back to the importance of research and the importance of these foundations or these institutions to, you know, really put effort and energy and money into these things to bring them to life, because, you know, at the end of the day, we've got to preserve ourselves.
I guess in those times, it was very little known about. However, it has been on the increase. So it just shows us that it is something that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Your mission right now is obviously to bring this to sort of a lot of people in the UK awareness, and start to do something about it. So once again, the rebel in you, the embodiment of this, making it happen. So I think it's fair to say that the success you've had in your career to date has come through the immersion of you into whatever you support. Once you've found the belief in it, you then go with it. And I think that's an admirable quality as a human.
Thank you.
Because they're poles apart, aren't they? If you think about it, everybody, you've got the glamour of the roaring 80s and 90s, the Spice Girls, and then now how she's embodied that mission to bring Kawasaki disease to global awareness. Okay, emphasis in UK, but I think this is something that we need to get behind and bring to awareness, so we can do something about it. And I think it really does bring life home, doesn't it?
Yes. Another story that we hear a lot of with children getting that damage or losing their lives to Kawasaki disease because of the delays in diagnosis. So it is our objective to do something about this. And it just grows stronger within me because I knew that after 2 lots of damage to Nadia's heart at that time at 7 months old, and taking 4 years to see a recovery, was something that I knew that I would dedicate the rest of my life to finding out the answers. I didn't know what answers I was going to find out, but I did feel that I would do everything in my power with all the energy that I had to find the answers. And I had no idea where to start, to be honest. And it wasn't until really after the phase of dressing celebrities for about 10 years after Nadia's recovery, then after that phase of about 10 years, I decided that I want to now start putting focus in a more major way onto the charity and maybe using my business knowledge and skills of how I could help the charity.
So just something that came to mind, which goes back to your roots about how you stepped out of the malaise of the issues and the challenges you had, which could have been quite, I would say, repressive, oppressive, and depressive. You know, you
Yes.
battled through that with creativity. And, we can just talk a little bit about, everybody's unique. We all have a signature and we all have a fingerprint. So that defines us as individuals. And it's clear from your work, it's evident from your, the material element, literally, that you built some iconic brands, didn't you? Which obviously came with the Spice Girls. But the more important piece is the identity piece and self-worthiness. You made a lot of people happy. You must have done.
Yeah,
Because
so
wasn't it the happy times in the 90s?
it certainly was, yes. And a large part of my business was made to order, made to measure. So there were people who maybe had a breast augmentation or whatever it was and couldn't find an outfit to fit them or something like that. They would come and see me and I could make up something specifically for their needs.
So as regards the sort of, coming into the sort of the 90s again, what were your key moments that, really leave a lasting legacy memory of your achievements? Let's talk it that. Yeah. What trophies did you carry out of the 90s that have took you on to where you are today?
Well, I think the journey of having my flagship store in Covent Garden and having, the sort of clientele that I dreamt about being a part of their lives, I really envied them for being in performance. Those are the things that I really enjoyed working with. And of course, dressing the biggest girl group in the world was very rewarding for me. I also did some work for Destiny's Child and Isla Fisher. You can see some of the images here behind me. I had a royal interview. There's been a lot of good memories that have given me the satisfaction that I have worked hard. Of course, there are times that I felt like I could do more, but generally I'm quite pleased with the outcome. Because it was part of a dream that was, for me, had developed quite well. It was quite rewarding.
So you followed your heart and it paid.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that, I know you talked about a royal interview. Can you just expand on that? Because that's interesting. You touched the nerves of the royal family, right? And is it fair to say, I think I've done a little bit of the right research, that you had a postage stamp, or there was a postage stamp?
Yes, last year, a few postage stamps have been launched with my work on it, and this piece is for Mel B that I did at the time. This is actually on one of the postage stamps,
right?
And I believe the little blue dress that Baby Spice wore as well.
Right.
So yeah, I was quite delighted to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it must be. You picked up a lot of self recognition in some respects, but equally, has the 90s closed now in your mind? Do you feel a sense of completion now? You're onto a deeper mission. I mean, how's this now transmuting itself into? Because you're not stopping. That's a fact. You're still on the go, and you want to make a difference in other areas now,
I think
right?
it's given me a second lease of life, because with all the 90s trends back again, it's kind of taken me back to revisit certain areas of the 90s. The only thing missing is the club culture. Right. We don't really have that, and I do.
We've got the retreat culture now, haven't we? It's yoga culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we get into the the holistic world a little bit there, which is quite interesting. Well, look, I mean, I think we've actually covered an awful lot.
Yes.
It's been one fantastic conversation, and I know we could go deeper and deeper and deeper into all sorts of different subject areas. But actually, it's been a privilege and a pleasure, Dee, to actually experience this conversation and literally to be looking at all of your work behind you with some incredible people at the time. And yeah, I mean, as you say, you're at the start line of a new journey. Kawasaki disease, here we come. We're going to make it happen. and we're actually going to draw more attention, hopefully capitalise the funding in the appropriate ways. So you'll be hearing more of us, everybody. And Love and Beauty is the Future, and Sensational Living, you'll definitely be hearing more of it. And we look forward to seeing you again, and hope you've enjoyed the channel. We're at the beginning of a super journey, and it's going to be very interesting. And Dee, thank you for being a brilliant
and Paul,
guest.
thank you very much for your time today. Just want to mention www.kawasakidiseaseuk.org.